The outcast Empath. Everyone rejected. Chose the broken Commando. Nobody wanted. The hall of selection was heavy with expectation, its obsidian floors slick and glassy beneath the harsh blue glow of the overhead crystals. Princess Sira stood alone at the center, shoulders squared, chin raised just enough to keep the tremor from her jaw. The heat of hundreds of eyes pressed upon her bronze skin, eyes that saw not a princess, but a creature out of place. Her feline tufted ears twitched, betraying a nervousness she refused to show in her posture. The embroidered folds of her regal robe did nothing to disguise her difference. Her long red tail, the mark of her genetic anomaly, swayed in anxious defiance behind her. Around the black mirrored chamber, dignitaries and soldiers formed a silent ring. The air was thick with the scent of ceremonial incense and the stifling weight of tradition. At the far end, seated on a dais carved with the scars of ancient wars, Sovereign Malvek watched with a face carved from stone. Only Sira, attuned as she was, could sense the distant rumble of his unease beneath his stoic mask. To the right, Lord Adrian stepped forward, silver robes whispering across the floor, lips curled in a practiced, elegant smile. "Your Highness," Adrian intoned, voice dripping with polished confidence. "It would honor my house and fulfill your father's fondest wish for you to accept my hand. With our union, the realm would be—" Sira forced herself to listen, but the words slid off her like oil. She felt the subtle currents of contempt beneath the surface, how he savored the act of lowering himself to claim her. He wanted her throne, not her heart. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat, searching for strength. The hall was a pressure chamber, every noble present a judge, every guard a witness to her disgrace. 8 suitors had already departed, heads held high, with only the faintest stain of relief marring their pride. Each time, Sira felt a little hollower, as if each rejection chipped away something vital. The sovereign's need for her marriage was a chain, cold and heavy. To him, she was a political equation, married, controlled, neutralized. She let her gaze wander, desperate for escape, until it landed on the gallery of war spoils along the north wall. Exotic weapons, banners, and trophies from a dozen conquered worlds filled the cases, but it was the reinforced enclosure that caught her attention. Inside, slouched in shadow, sat a human. Mason, once called the Reaper. His reputation had traveled farther than the Empire's banners, an elite commando, relentless and unyielding. Now, stripped of rank and freedom, he was nothing but a captive, haunted by sorrow and fury. Even across the hall, Sira could feel the jagged edges of his pain, raw, unfiltered. No masks, no courtly manipulation, just pain. Lord Edrin continued, "A future free of discord, united in purpose. I await your answer, Princess." The words scraped at her nerves. Something inside her snapped, whether defiance or despair she could not tell. She drew herself up and spoke, her voice ringing clear and cold across the hall. "I choose the human, the one none of you would claim." The chamber froze. For a moment, the only sound was the humming of the crystals overhead. Gasps echoed from the gallery. A dignitary's goblet slipped from numb fingers and shattered on the stone. The sovereign's lips parted, speechless. Lord Edrin's self-assured smile crumbled, confusion and outrage warring on his face. You cannot be serious," Edron stammered, turning to the sovereign for support. Malvek's jaw tightened, his eyes burning with the fury of a father and a ruler betrayed. But Sira stood her ground, tail flicking, ears flattened against her skull. "Bring him," she ordered. The guards hesitated, their thoughts buzzing with disbelief. Finally, 2 moved to the enclosure. They dragged Mason to his feet. He staggered, resisting only enough to maintain a scrap of dignity. They led him through the hall, the crowd parting in silent revulsion. Mason met Syrah's eyes just once, a brief flash of blue, wild and lost. He endured the indignity of ritual cleansing, stripped and scrubbed with abrasive soaps as the attendants sneered. They dressed him in simple robes, white, the color of sacrifice, not celebration, and marched him, head bowed, toward Syrah's private quarters. Syrah waited alone in her rooms, every muscle tense. She paced across the patterned rug, every footfall echoing the thunder in her chest. At last, the doors opened. The guards shoved Mason forward and withdrew at her command, leaving the two alone in the hush of the royal suite. Mason stood, fists clenched, breathing hard. His eyes darted around the chamber, cataloging exits, weapons, threats. Syrah said nothing, unsure whether any words could reach him. The silence stretched, taut and dangerous. Suddenly, Mason's trauma broke free. He whirled and smashed his fist into the stone wall, the impact echoing through the room. He didn't come at her. His rage was a storm with no target but himself and the world that had made him a weapon. Syrah's breath caught, her heart pounding. She could have called for the guards, could have retreated. Instead, she stepped closer, trembling but resolute. Gently, she reached out and rested her hand on his scarred back. For an instant, she was nearly drowned by the torrent inside him. Terror, guilt, endless nights of blood and fire. She pressed on, searching, seeking a quiet current beneath the storm. There, faint but real, a memory, a boy running beneath a golden sun, laughter in the air, grass soft underfoot. She clung to it, willed it to grow. Her empathic gift magnified the warmth of that memory, weaving it into the present. Slowly, the tremors in Mason's body subsided. His breath slowed, chest heaving, but no longer with panic. They sank to the floor together, side by side. The world outside the chamber fell away. In the hush, they breathed in unison, survivors in the calm after chaos, anchored by the fragile thread of memory and the touch of understanding. A fragile rhythm emerged between them. Mason remained wary, moving through the palace like a wolf in foreign territory, every gesture shadowed by old wounds. He slept little, eyes flickering open at the smallest sound. Sometimes his hands trembled, and when the echoes of memory overwhelmed him, he would retreat into silence, jaw clenched, shoulders taut. Syrah became his steady presence, sometimes sitting beside him in companionable quiet, sometimes a gentle warmth at the edge of his awareness. She learned quickly, never approach him from behind, never touch his right wrist. She kept her voice soft, her movements unhurried, offering a constant reminder that he was no longer a captive of war, but a guest, her guest, for however long the court allowed. In the early days, she guided him to the palace's highest terrace, her rooftop garden. The air was crisp there, untainted by the psychic noise of the court below. Fragrant blooms spilled over marble planters, and wind chimes whispered secrets to the stars. Here, Mason's eyes lost some of their haunted edge. He would stand at the balustrade, staring out at the city's distant spires, breathing in the silence. Syrah, tail curled in her lap, would sit cross-legged on the mosaic tiles and simply wait. Their grounding rituals became routine. Each evening, as dusk painted the sky, she would kneel beside him and reach out, never forcing, always asking permission with her eyes. At first it was transactional. She soothed his pain, pressing her empathic gift against the jagged edges of his trauma. He tolerated her touch, gritting his teeth against the vulnerability it brought. One afternoon, as they sat amid a riot of flowering vines, Syrah spoke quietly. "You don't have to talk, Mason, but you don't have to be silent either." He said nothing for a long while. Then, almost inaudibly, he replied, "No one ever called me by my name before. Not here." She smiled, gentle. "Names have power. You are more than what they made you." He turned away, but the stiffness in his shoulders eased a fraction. Gradually, trust took root. Mason began to share more than just his suffering. During their sessions, Sierra would press her palm to his heart or rest her forehead to his, and through the shimmering haze of his memories, she glimpsed the fierce loyalty of his comrades. She felt the wild joy of reckless youth, the pride of brotherhood forged in fire and survival. Sometimes, laughter would bubble up between them, unexpected and sweet, chasing away the shadows. But Sira also tasted the agony of loss, the night his unit was ambushed, the desperate screams, the cold silence that followed. Each memory pressed its weight onto her soul. She absorbed it, helping turn wounds into scars, carrying part of his burden so he could breathe a little easier. One night, after a particularly raw session, Mason opened his eyes and saw her exhaustion etched into every line of her face. He sat up, uncertain, and for the first time reached for her hand. "Are you all right?" His voice was rough, unfamiliar with gentleness. Sierra blinked, startled by the concern. "I will be. This isn't easy for either of us." He hesitated, then squeezed her fingers. "Thank you, Sierra, for not running." She smiled, her eyes shining in the lantern glow. "I'm right where I choose to be." From that moment, Mason began to see Sierra, not just as a healer, but as a woman. He noticed how her ears drooped when she was tired, the effort it took her to restrain her wildness within the confines of the court. He saw the way she carried herself in public, stiff, proud, aching to be something more than an oddity or a tool. One evening, as they shared a simple meal in her quarters, Mason watched her push food around her plate, lost in thought. "Something on your mind?" he asked quietly. She looked up, startled, then smiled sheepishly. "Just the usual. Politics, expectations, my father's disappointment." He grunted, understanding. "You're stronger than they know." She met his gaze, the vulnerability in her eyes startling him. "Sometimes I wish I didn't have to be." He reached across the table, hesitating for just a heartbeat before taking her hand in his. The contact was electric, no psychic storm, just warmth and skin. Sierra's breath caught. For once, her power was silent, her mind at peace. Mason's thumb traced a slow circle over her knuckles, grounding them both. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me." He smiled, a soft, rare thing. "You're hard to miss." Their roles blurred. Healer and patient became partners in vulnerability, each bearing scars and secrets beneath the surface. In the nights that followed, their closeness deepened. During a session, Sierra's touch lingered longer than necessary. Mason's heartbeat quickened beneath her palm. He found himself grounding in her presence, no longer just tolerating her nearness, but craving it. One late night, the city quieted beneath a shroud of mist. Sierra lay beside Mason on the terrace, their bodies close but not quite touching. She stared at the stars, feeling his gaze on her. "Do you ever wish for escape?" she murmured. "All the time," Mason replied. "But here, with you, it almost feels like I already have." She turned to him, her hand drifting to his cheek. Their breaths mingled, the space between them charged with longing and uncertainty. He leaned in, hesitant, and she closed the distance. Their lips met, tentative, searching. For a moment there was no pain, no past, just the aching reality of the present. Afterward they sat in silence, content, the bond between them stronger than words. But in the shadows of the palace, others watched. Minister Veyron, cunning and ambitious, made it his business to observe what the sovereign's eyes missed. He had expected Sierra's choice of the human to end in disaster, a scandal, a political liability, a broken woman easier to control. Yet day by day, her confidence grew. Mason was no longer a broken weapon, but a man learning hope. Their alliance unsettled Veyron, who thrived on discord. He watched from behind lattice screens, eyes cold and calculating, as Syrah and Mason walked the garden paths or exchanged whispered laughter by candlelight. He took note of every touch, every glance, every moment of tenderness. It was time to intervene. Veyron summoned Syrah to his private chambers, a rare honor, cloaked in the pretense of counsel. The room was dim, filled with the scent of spiced wine and old parchment. Syrah entered, wary, tail flicking with impatience. "You wish to see me, minister?" she asked, standing tall despite her fatigue. Veyron smiled, all teeth and shadows. "Princess, you have been much on my mind. I worry for you, for your judgment." Her eyes narrowed. "My choice is not your concern." He poured a measure of wine, swirling it thoughtfully. "On the contrary, the court whispers, and I listen. They say your empathy is a rare gift, but rare things are often dangerous." Syrah bristled but said nothing. Veyron leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Have you ever wondered, Princess, whether your gift is truly compassion, or something else? Something more predatory?" She stared at him, incredulous. "You think I'm harming Mason?" He shrugged, lips curling. "History is full of your kind, Syrah. Empaths who claim to heal, but only fed on the pain of others. There are dark tales from your lineage, stories of those who consumed the suffering of their companions, leaving only emptiness behind." Syrah's fists clenched at her sides. "I would never—" He interrupted, eyes gleaming. "Intentions matter little, Princess. Perception shapes reality. Is Mason better for knowing you, or merely emptied, his pain siphoned away for your benefit?" She recoiled, breath catching in her throat. Doubt flickered in her eyes. Veyron pressed on, his tone soft, sinister. "I only wish for your happiness, Princess. But beware, sometimes, the healer is the true predator." The words lingered, cold and poisonous, as Syrah left his chambers. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Veyron's poison festered in Syrah's heart, unseen but relentless. Each memory of his whispered insinuations gnawed at her resolve. Predatory instinct, dark lineage, the suggestion that every act of compassion was a disguised hunger. She tried to brush them aside, but the words had burrowed deep. She began to withdraw, folding herself inward. Her touch, once a gentle lifeline, became hesitant. Her voice lost its warmth, her laughter faded to silence. Even her mind, so often open and welcoming, closed itself behind careful walls. Mason noticed the change immediately. At first, he mistook it for exhaustion. She had pushed herself hard, after all, carrying so much of his pain. But as days passed, the subtle shifts accumulated. The easy comfort that had grown between them turned brittle. Syrah moved through her own rooms like a ghost, careful to avoid his gaze. Their grounding rituals dwindled, replaced by awkward silences and unspoken questions. One morning, as Syrah retreated from the terrace without a word, Mason caught her wrist. "Syrah, talk to me. What's wrong?" She pulled free, her eyes downcast. "It's nothing. You need rest." "That's not it," he pressed, voice rough with worry. "You're pulling away." She hesitated, then shook her head, the movement stiff. "I'm just tired, Mason. Please." He watched her go, a hollow ache settling in his chest. The warmth at the edge of his mind, her steady presence, was gone. He felt its absence like a limb severed. Without her, the world pressed in, cold and loud. The trust they had built, hard-won and fragile, began to unravel. For Syrah, the isolation was suffocating. She replayed Veyron's words, searching for truth in the poison. Was she a healer, or merely a monster in disguise? Was she helping Mason or feeding on his pain? The questions clawed at her, growing sharper each day. Desperate to prove herself, she summoned Mason late one evening, her voice shaking with determination. "I need to help you," she insisted. "Let me in. Let me see everything." Mason hesitated, the old suspicion flickering in his eyes, but her desperation was unmistakable. Slowly he nodded, dropping all defenses. All right. No shields, no walls. Take it. They sat together, hands clasped. Syrah's power flowed between them, cool and searching. She delved deeper than ever before, threading her consciousness through the labyrinth of his trauma. At first, it was the familiar chaos: gunfire, blood, the tang of adrenaline and fear. But then the memory shifted, sharpening to a night that had haunted him for years. Mason's unit, huddled in the ruins of an outpost, surrounded by shadows. The enemy was unseen, the tension suffocating. Then, a psychic pulse, a wave of paranoia so thick it split reality. Comrades turned on each other, screaming, clawing, blind with terror. Mason's voice, hoarse with pleading, went unheard. The carnage unfolded in slow motion, horror compounding horror. At the heart of the chaos, Syrah saw the device, a small, intricate machine glowing with a baleful red light. On its surface gleamed a familiar crest, her own house, unmistakable, etched into the alloy. The weapon that shattered Mason's mind, that destroyed his friends, was made by her people. She recoiled from the memory, breaking the link. The room spun. Her breath came ragged, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Mason stared at her, confusion and pain warring in his eyes. "What did you see?" he demanded. Syrah's voice was barely a whisper. "The device. It was ours. My family's. We did that." His face twisted, anguish eclipsed by betrayal. "You knew?" She shook her head, desperate. "No, Mason, I swear. I didn't know. I never." He pulled away, recoiling as if burned. "It doesn't matter. It was you, all along." She tried to reach for him, but he was already gone, retreating into himself, walls slamming shut. The trust that had been their sanctuary was reduced to ashes in an instant. The days that followed were filled with silence and regret. They avoided each other, sharing the same quarters, but separated by an ocean of guilt and grief. Syrah sat for hours on the edge of her bed, staring at nothing, paralyzed by the certainty that she was the monster Veyron had accused her of being. She replayed every moment with Mason, wondering if every kindness was tainted by a deeper hunger. Mason, robbed of her steadying presence, spiraled. Nightmares tore at him, dragging him back to that ruinous night. He paced the halls restlessly, fists clenching at shadows. The darkness he had once learned to endure returned with a vengeance. The fragile hope Syrah had kindled was snuffed out, replaced by old ghosts. In the heart of the palace, Veyron watched and waited. He saw the distance between princess and captive, the fracture that now ran through their souls. It was time to strike. He presented himself before Sovereign Malvek with forged evidence in hand, a dossier thick with fabricated reports and falsified testimonies. Veyron spoke in grave, measured tones. "Your Majesty, I bring grave news. The princess's empathic trait is not only dangerous, it is contagious. It has already begun to affect those around her. Left unchecked, it could spread through the court, undermining our people's will." Malvek's face hardened. "What proof do you have?" Veyron slid the documents forward. "These reports detail the princess's contact with the human. His instability has worsened. Others who served near her have reported nightmares, uncharacteristic mood swings. It is clear Syrah's gift is a threat. The right of severance is the only way to ensure her loyalty and the realm's safety." Malvek hesitated, his expression wavering between fear and regret. "The right. Will it harm her?" "It will strip her of empathy," Veyron replied, voice silk and steel. "She will remain obedient, hollow, but intact. It is the only way." The sovereign closed his eyes, pained. "Arrange it." Syrah felt the verdict before the guards arrived. A chill swept through her, as if the sun itself had turned its face away. When the guards entered, their thoughts clamped down. She knew this was not a request. "Princess Sira," the captain intoned, "by decree of the sovereign, you are to undergo the rite of severance. Please come with us." She nodded, resigned. There was no point in protest. The decision had been made. She walked between the guards, her head held high, the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. In the corridor, she caught a glimpse of her father's face, turned away, shrouded in shadow. She searched his features for any sign of love or regret, but found only fear. Terror coiled within her, cold and inescapable. She was to be unmade, stripped of the very essence that made her who she was. Yet in her despair, a single spark flared, a desperate final hope. She reached out with her mind, sending a silent, urgent plea across the chasm between her and Mason. "Don't let them erase me." In his room, Mason startled, the ghost of her voice echoing in his mind. But he was trapped in his own pain, paralyzed by betrayal and grief. He squeezed his eyes shut, fists knotted in the sheets. The silence between them grew deeper, more final. And so Sira was led away, hope flickering and dying with every step, as the world she had known slipped beyond her reach. As Sira was taken to the sterile sanctum for the rite, her steps echoed along corridors scrubbed of all warmth and memory. The air was clinical, cold, humming with hidden machinery and psychic anticipation. Silver-robed priests whispered incantations, their faces masked, their thoughts locked tight behind years of discipline. They moved with the precise detachment of surgeons preparing for a dissection. In the shadows beyond, Veyron watched the procession with eyes glittering with triumph. The trap was set, the final phase of his plan in motion. He signaled to his psychic adept, a woman with white hair and hollow eyes, who began her silent work. Invisible energy rippled through the walls, a subtle frequency, barely perceptible, but devastating in its intent. It was a replica of the weapon that had broken Mason on the battlefield, a psychic wave designed to unmoor the mind, to drag its victim back into the abyss. Across the palace, Mason felt the attack instantly, a spear of dread twisting through his skull. The world tilted, shadows lengthened, and the air thickened with old terror. Phantom voices crowded his ears. "Traitor. Monster. You failed them all." The past and present blurred, blood on his hands, screams in the dark. Paranoia clawed at his mind, threatening to swallow him whole. His fists clenched, his breathing grew ragged. Guards in the corridor outside gripped their staves tighter, readying for the return of the Reaper, the berserker who had once painted war with agony. But Mason remembered Sira's teachings, her voice, steady and low, guiding him through the storm. "Ground yourself." He reached for the present, forcing himself to feel the world as it was. The chill of the floor beneath his feet, the lingering scent of her garden, earth, jasmine, the sharp bite of citrus. He remembered her laughter, soft and unguarded, and the warmth of her touch. He clung to those anchors, letting the psychic assault recede to the edges of his awareness, like a radio left on in another room. The Reaper did not surface. Instead, a new purpose crystallized within him: save Sira. He was no longer lost. He was a man with a mission. Moving with silent determination, Mason slipped into the corridors. The palace's defenses were formidable, but he had studied every route, every change of the guard. He disabled 2 sentries at the junction with a single precise blow each. Neither saw him coming. He moved like a shadow, his mind clear, his will unbroken. He reached the sanctum doors, where 2 more guards barred the way. They raised their weapons, fear flickering in their eyes. "Step aside," Mason said, voice quiet but resolute. They hesitated, and in that instant he struck, swift, efficient. Both slumped to the floor, unharmed but out cold. Mason pressed a hand to the panel. The doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, The sanctum was a ring of polished stone and humming crystal, its heart dominated by an altar of white marble. Sira knelt before it, wrists bound with silken cords. Priests circled her, murmuring. At the far end, Varen watched, arms crossed, smile thin as a blade. The psychic adept raised her hands, weaving the final layers of the snare. Mason ignored her. He strode into the circle, every eye upon him, the psychic pressure mounting. "Stop!" a priest shouted. "You are not permitted!" Mason dropped to his knees before Sira, heedless of the threats. He took her hands in his skin rough and real against hers. He looked into her eyes, wide, terrified, but still burning with the embers of hope. He opened his mind fully, letting the walls fall. Every scar, every fear, every flicker of love spilled from him in a raw, wordless torrent. He showed her the truth, his pain, his terror, his memories of her, how she had anchored him, how she had saved him from himself. "Sira," he breathed, voice trembling, "you are not a predator. You are my anchor. Let me be yours." The priests recoiled, some clutching their heads as their own psychic barriers shuddered. Varen hissed in alarm, ordering the adept to intensify the assault. Sira felt Mason's trust flood through her, pure, undiluted, unafraid. For the first time since Varen's poison, she saw herself through his eyes, not as a monster, but as a woman who healed, who dared to love. His faith buoyed her, burning away the doubt that had corroded her heart. She drew a deep breath, centering herself. Her empathic sense unfurled, not to harm, not to dominate, but to connect. She reached out, not just to Mason, but to every soul present. The circle became a web of consciousness, Sira at its center, amplifying truth and vulnerability. A shockwave rippled through the sanctum. The priests staggered, forced to confront the secrets they had hidden even from themselves, jealousies, fears, whispered betrayals. Nobles in the gallery felt their arrogance crumble, their insecurities laid bare. The sovereign, watching from the shadows, gasped as the mask he had worn for decades fell away, revealing the frightened father beneath. Varen fought to maintain control, pouring his will into the psychic adept. "Resist her!" he screamed. "She is a parasite! She feeds on you!" But Sira's power was no longer solitary. Mason's trust wove through her, an unbreakable thread. The web grew, ensnaring even Varen. His mind filled with visions of his own ambition. Every lie, every manipulation, every secret dread. He tried to shield himself, but the weight of his own darkness overwhelmed him. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his head, a strangled sob escaping his lips. The psychic assault shattered. The adept slumped, spent. The sanctum fell silent but for the ragged breathing of those present. Sira looked at Mason, tears streaking her face. She reached up, cupping his cheek, her tail curling around his wrist. "I am myself," she whispered, "and I am yours." He smiled, fierce and grateful, and helped her to her feet. The silken cords fell away, forgotten. Sira turned to the sovereign, who stared at her with a mixture of awe and regret. For a moment, father and daughter simply regarded each other, an unspoken understanding passing between them. She inclined her head, not in submission, but in farewell. Hand in hand, Sira and Mason walked from the sanctum, the crowd parting before them. They left behind the priests, the nobles, the ancient fears. They left their cages, one built of guilt, one of pain, lying shattered in their wake. Together, they stepped out into the dawn, transformed by love and truth, and vanished into the world beyond the palace walls. 5 years passed on Haven, a world no imperial map could find, a blue-green jewel terraformed on the far edge of the known systems. In a quiet valley, beside a slow, laughing stream, Mason and Sira built a life together. A life so simple, so real, it sometimes startled them both. Their stone cottage stood at the foot of two ancient trees, sunlight dappling the walls, The garden a wild tapestry of color. Earth's tomatoes tangled among Syrah's native fire fruit. Blossoms of gold and scarlet attracting humming insects with wings like shards of stained glass. Mason had become a man at peace. He moved through the days with the easy grace of someone who no longer measured every step against threat and memory. His body was strong, tanned by the alien sun, and his hands bore the honest marks of work, mending tools, tending the garden, lifting Syrah in laughter after a playful chase. He no longer woke gasping in the dark, reaching for weapons that were not there. The haunted look that once shadowed his eyes had faded, replaced by something quieter, deeper. Sometimes he hummed as he worked, a low, contented sound that drifted through the open windows and mingled with birdsong. Syrah's empathy, once a curse, now flowed through her like a gentle tide. She felt the pulse of the land beneath her feet, the roots of the trees, the sigh of the wind, the lazy satisfaction of their six-limbed chitin-plated beast, Tavo, who grazed the wild grass with ponderous calm. Most of all, she felt the steady warmth of Mason's mind, a serenity she had never dared imagine. Their connection was a living thing, woven from countless shared moments, her head on his chest as rain drummed the roof, his hand absently stroking her tufted ear as they read by lamplight, their laughter echoing together in the kitchen as they argued over the right way to slice fire fruit. She would sometimes sit on the porch as evening crept in, watching Mason haul water from the well or shoo Tavo from the tomato patch. He would glance up, catch her watching, and smile, a small private smile that said, "This is home." She would smile back, her heart echoing the same clear thought. When he came to sit beside her, he would gently brush his fingers over her ear, and she would lean into his touch, their minds brushing, a wordless affirmation of belonging. One afternoon, the air thick with the scent of ripe fruit and warm earth, Mason worked among the rows of fire fruit. He paused, wiped sweat from his brow, and straightened, stretching the stiffness from his back. From somewhere down the valley, a distant melody floated on the breeze, a child's flute, high and sweet, twining through the air like silver thread. The first note was nothing, the second, a ripple of memory, but the third, a piercing crystalline pitch, cut through Mason's calm like a knife. His body froze, his heart slammed against his ribs. The garden blurred, the world tilting, the sound unspooling into the high, inhuman scream of a psychic weapon. Phantom voices rose, pain, accusation, terror. Memories not dead, but dormant, waiting for just this moment to pounce. Mason's breath stuttered. The taste of fear coated his tongue. His hands curled into fists, the urge to run or fight, battling with the reality of sunlight and tomatoes and peace. The past threatened to claim him, to drag him back into the dark. But Syrah was there before he could spiral. She appeared at his side, her presence as tangible as the warmth of the sun. She reached for him, not as a healer, not as a savior, but as his partner, his equal. She touched his shoulder, grounding him. "Mason," she said softly, her voice a lifeline. "I'm here." He turned, eyes wild, searching her face for something real. She took his hands, pressed them to her heart, and leaned her forehead to his. Through their connection, she felt the roiling storm within him, but also the bedrock beneath, the place she had helped him build. She did not draw away from the pain, did not try to erase it. Instead, she stood with him among the ghosts, refusing to yield. "Breathe with me," she whispered. He did, shaky at first, then steadier, matching his breath to hers. The phantom scream faded, replaced by the rhythm of their hearts, the solidity of her fingers entwined with his. The world sharpened, garden, sunlight, the far-off laughter of a child. He blinked, returning, and found Syrah's eyes full of fierce love. "I thought I'd lost it," he murmured, voice raw. That I'd lost you. She shook her head, a slow smile curving her lips. You are here. I am here. We face it together, Mason. Always. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel the desperation in his grip. She wrapped her arms around him, her long red tail curling around his leg, anchoring him. For a long moment they simply stood, joined in defiance of the past. The pain was still there. Ghosts never vanished. But it was bearable, shared between them. He pressed his face into her neck, breathing her in. You saved me, he said, voice muffled. She held him, stroking his hair, her own breath catching with emotion. No, love. We saved each other. He lifted his head, searching her eyes for doubt and finding none. I don't want to let go, he said, voice rough. Then don't, she replied. She kissed him, fierce and desperate, pouring everything she felt, love, gratitude, stubborn hope, into the contact. He answered with equal fire, their mouths hungry, bodies pressed close. Their kiss was not gentle. It was a testament, a promise born of survival and devotion. He backed her toward the porch, hands tangled in her hair. She laughed, breathless, and pulled him down with her onto the old wooden bench, the world narrowing to just the two of them. Their bodies moved in rhythm, urgent and unashamed. Her tail slid around his thigh, holding him close as their need crested and broke. Afterward, they lay together, tangled and warm, the sun painting lazy gold patterns across their skin. Mason traced the line of her jaw, his fingers gentle. 5 years, he whispered. Sometimes I still can't believe it. Syrah smiled, her eyes shining. Believe it. This is real. We are real. He laughed softly, the sound free of bitterness. The Reaper is truly gone. She touched his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. And the princess is nothing but a woman in love. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other, feeling the world settle around them. The storm had passed. The echoes of pain receded, leaving only the strength they had forged together. Their roots, once shallow and tentative, were now intertwined, deep, resilient, unbreakable. The sun dipped toward the horizon. Syrah curled closer, her voice a sleepy murmur. Home, she said. Mason kissed her brow, holding her tight. Home, he echoed. And in the quiet valley, beneath the alien sky, Mason and Syrah endured, survivors, lovers, and at last, simply themselves. A black Imperial drone appeared in the sky, a polished obsidian shard glinting against the tranquil blue, shattering the years of hard-won peace that cloaked the valley. Mason noticed it first, a sharp glimmer above the orchard, moving with unnatural purpose. He was on his knees in the soil, coaxing stubborn firefruit vines into order, when the sunlight flickered over the drone's mirrored hull. His breath caught, and for an instant he was back on battlefields, watching the telltale shine of hunter-killers. But this drone was smaller, sleeker, a messenger, not a weapon. Syrah emerged from the cottage, tail flicking in agitation. The moment she saw the drone's markings, her heart lurched. She recognized the sigil etched in silver, her father's crest, the seal of Sovereign Malvek. The drone dipped lower, hovering at the edge of the garden, rotor whine muffled to a respectful hush. It paused, as if waiting for her permission. She stepped forward, drawing herself tall, Mason at her side. With a soft chime, the drone projected a slender hollow ribbon into the air. A face formed in the shimmer, her father, aged and diminished, the steel in his bearing now tempered by something gentler. His voice issued from the drone, frail but sincere. My daughter, Syrah. The words quivered with a vulnerability she had never heard. If you hear this, then know that the old regime is no more. The doctrines of purity, of exclusion, are finished. You broke the fever that gripped our empire. The day you revealed the truth in the sanctum, your courage, your defiance sparked a reckoning. The council fell. The old laws are dust. Mason's hand found hers, anchoring her in the moment as the message continued. I invite you home, not as a princess. There are no thrones left to inherit. Come as an advisor, as a visionary. Your name is cleared, your legacy restored. You are welcomed as a hero, beloved by a people you never stopped serving. If you choose to return, a place waits for you at my side. If you choose not to, know that you have my love and my gratitude for all the days that remain to me. The hollow faded. The drone hovered in silence, then ascended, vanishing into the sky as quickly as it had come. Silence settled over the valley, heavy with possibility and dread. Mason let out a long, shaky breath. He looked to Sierra, searching her face for answers, for fear, for hope. Well, he said, forcing a smile. That was unexpected. Sierra's shoulders slumped, the tension of old wounds tightening beneath her skin. He sounds changed, she whispered. Everything sounds changed. But is it really? Mason asked, voice low. Or is it just words, Sierra? They tried to break you. They almost broke us. She nodded, fingers tracing the lines of his hand. I know. But if the Empire truly has changed, if there's a chance to help rebuild, to make it better, shouldn't I at least consider it? Mason hesitated, jaw clenching. He looked away, eyes scanning the familiar hills, the winding river, the distant glow of their neighbor's lantern. I would follow you anywhere. You know that. But I can't lie to you. Going back, even as an advisor, I'm not sure I could do it again. I barely survived last time. Sierra reached up, brushing a thumb along his cheek. You don't have to go back. No one is asking you to. This is your home too. He caught her hand and pressed it to his lips. My peace is wherever you are, Sierra. But I'm afraid. Afraid they'll see you as a tool again. Or blame you if things don't change fast enough. Afraid they'll take you from me. This time. For good. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Dusk descended, painting the valley in indigo and gold. They retreated to the porch, sitting side by side on the old wooden bench. Tavo, their loyal beast, lumbered over and curled at their feet, chitin plates glinting in the twilight. Mason draped an arm around Sierra's shoulders, pulling her close. She nestled into him, her ear brushing his cheek, her tail curling lazily along the slats. For a long time, neither spoke. Sierra's fingers drifted over the scars on Mason's arm. Faint white lines, stories of pain and survival written on skin. She let her touch linger, tracing the evidence of what they had endured, what they had overcome. Her empathy, ever attuned to him, felt the tremor of old anxieties, the echo of wounds that healed but never quite vanished. You know, she said quietly, these scars, they remind me that we earned this, that peace wasn't given to us. We fought for every moment. I fought to be more than what they called me. You fought to be more than what they took from you. He looked at her, eyes luminous in the gathering dark. I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted to live, to stop running, to belong. She smiled softly. And you do. Here, with me. We belong. He exhaled, the last of his tension bleeding away. Do you regret it? Walking away from all that? The throne, your legacy? Sierra shook her head. The Empire's approval, my old titles, they mean nothing compared to what we've built here. I don't need their forgiveness. I don't need their praise. I only need this. She took his hand, lacing her fingers with his. You, us, this home. He leaned into her, lips brushing her hair. They called you nothing. To them, I was a flaw. They never understood. We were the only ones truly free. She rested her head on his shoulder, letting the warmth of his presence seep into her bones. Exactly. Let the Empire chase its new dawn. Let them rewrite their stories. Ours is already written. Here, beneath these stars. Above them, the sky deepened, stars wheeling slowly in their endless dance. The silence between them was full, not empty. Love and contentment radiating like the heat of a banked fire. The black drone's shadow was gone, but its message lingered, a door left open, an old wound at last allowed to heal. Mason squeezed her hand, his vow simple and true. My peace is wherever you are. Syrah turned, brushing her lips against his jaw, her tail curling around his waist. And mine is with you. They sat that way, watching the night deepen, the lights of distant homesteads flickering like fireflies. The Empire's invitation would go unanswered. There would be no triumphant return, no restoration of old glory. The princess everyone rejected, and the human no one wanted, had already found what they had sought their entire lives, not in titles or power, but in each other. As the night breeze rustled through the garden and the stars wheeled overhead, Mason and Syrah remained, anchored, unbroken, wholly free. Our story ends here. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Super Thanks button right under the video to leave a tip. It truly helps our team improve the quality of our work. We're grateful to each and every subscriber for being with us. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.